Hello students, today we will discuss our new topic, that is plasma membrane or cell membrane. The plasma membrane or cell membrane actually is the outermost boundary in animal cell, but in plant cell it is covered by an other membrane that is called the cell wall. Actually, cell membrane is flexible and is a semi-permeable that allows only few substances or the selective substances to pass through it, and it contains a lot of biological molecules, especially proteins, lipids, and uh, the glycolipids and the carbohydrates. Actually, there are two models about the structure of cell membrane around the cell are given. The one is called the unit membrane model and the other one is the fluid mosaic model. Actually, the unit membrane model gives us the idea that the lipid bilayer is sandwiched between the inner and outer protein membrane. Actually, if we see the sandwich, the innermost thing will be the lipid bilayer and the outer and the inner membrane will be the protein coats. Like you see, the innermost that contains a lot of juicy material and the semi viscous material, and the outer will be the bread, outer will be bread and inner will be bread. So this model was the old one, and it is not considered as the true model or the true actually location of the cell membrane. The great one is that model or the recent model, that is a fluid mosaic model. It tells us that the fluid mosaic, as the name represents, there are a sea of phospholipids in which, like the icebergs, in which the solid particles of membrane proteins are present. Actually, the cell membrane is composed of the sea of the phospholipids, and in which embedded molecules that are the proteins. So these were the two models about the plasma membrane, and after that in this topic we will discuss about the functions of the plasma membrane. Actually, what it does, as I have already mentioned, there are very few functions. For example, the plasma membrane involved in the selective substances to pass through, so it is called the partially permeable membrane. Permeable mean it is permit only few substances to pass through it, and it involves many different functions like exocytosis, endocytosis, and phagocytosis, pinocytosis, and many more. So let's start with the reading of composition of plasma membrane and its two model first, and then we will discuss in detail the functions of plasma membrane, that are very important long question that is asked in exams. So let's start with the reading. Plasma membrane or cell membrane is the outermost boundary of the cell. Actually, here we can also see the word plasma membrane or cell membrane. Actually, there is a difference, a little bit difference between plasma membrane and cell membrane. The cell membrane of the cell actually is called the plasma membrane. Why it is called plasma membrane? Because it is in direct contact with the plasma, or we can say direct contact with the interstitial fluid, and the cell membrane of the organelles that are present in the cell are not called, is not called actually the plasma membrane. The cell membrane of the organelles is not plasma membrane, but the cell membrane of the cell is actually plasma membrane. So it is the outermost boundary of animal cell. However, in most plant cell it is covered by the cell wall. Cell membrane is chemically composed of lipids and protein. 60 to 80% are proteins, 20 to 40% are lipids. In addition, there is a small quantity of carbohydrates. So the next we will discuss about the two models. First one is the unit membrane model. Many biologists contribute to establish the structural organization of cell membrane. It was proposed earlier that cell membrane is composed of lipid bilayer, sandwiched between inner and outer layer of the protein. This basic structure is called the unit membrane and is present in all the cellular organelles. The modern technology has revealed that lipid bilayer are not sandwiched between the two protein membranes. Actually, the next model is decent model, and it tells about the protein layers are not continuous and are not confined to the surface of the membrane but are embedded in the lipid layer in the mosaic manner or in the rough manner. The word mosaic means rough or random. This discovery led to the proposal of fluid mosaic model. This model at present in the most accepted one. Cell membrane also contain a charged pores through which the movement of material take place by the active and the passive transport, and these pores are called as the channels or gates for different charged substances, for example ions and especially sodium, potassium, calcium channels and gates. So here we have the diagram about the unit membrane model. You can see the outer and the inner membrane is formed by protein and the lipid bilayer is a sandwich. You can see the outermost head and the innermost tail. Actually it is a structure of phospholipid and the tail and the head. The tail is hydrophobic and the head is the hydrophilic, and protein part is also the hydrophilic zone. And the next diagram we have the fluid mosaic model. You can see just like a ocean of the phospholipids, and in which different protein molecules are embedded and different many more substances. Cholesterol actually gives the fluidity of the cell membrane, and many glycoprotein and many glycolipids and many more things. What are the functions of the plasma membrane? Actually, the functions of plasma membrane are the transport of material, especially of the specific materials, to pass through it. For example, only those substances which are lipid soluble can pass through the cell membrane easily, and which are not lipid soluble, they are not pass through the lipid membrane easily. Actually, these substances can pass through the different types of pores of proteins that are present in the cell membrane. Actually, these proteins form pores or channels or gates that allow different substances to pass through it. For example, water molecules pass through special pores. These pores are called the aquaporins, and glucose is also moved by different types of pores. So if we have a gas molecule or lipid soluble substances, these pass through the plasma membrane. So the substances can move by the two processes, that are the passive transport and it will be the active transport. Actually, what is meant by the passive transport and the active transport? Actually, the passive transport is when there is a no need of energy and the molecules move from the high concentration to low concentration. And active transport means when substances move from against the concentration gradient, or you can say uphill movement, and the energy is needed in the form of ATP. It is called the active transport. There are many substances that move by passive transport, and there are many that actually move by the active transport. So after that, some substances move inside the cell in the form of bulk. If the bulk material is entering into the cell, it is called the endocytosis. It may be the solid particle and it may be the liquid molecule. So if it is a solid molecule, it is called the phagocytosis, and if it is a liquid molecule, it is called the pinocytosis. And the name pinocytosis represents the water, so we can say the liquid molecule can the entry of liquid molecule into the cell is called the pinocytosis. And if the gas molecules are entering into the cell, it is called simple diffusion. And let's start with the reading, and after that I will tell you about the examples of simple diffusion, the substances which are transported within the cell with the help of simple diffusion or facilitated diffusion and the active transport. So transport of material is one of the vital roles it plays for the cell. It offers a barrier between the cell contents and their environment, allowing only selective substances to pass through it. Thus, it is known as a differentially permeable or selectively permeable membrane. The substances which are lipid soluble across it more easily than others. Therefore, it regulates the flow of materials, uh, which are that are the ions to maintain a definite gradient. Many small gas molecules and water, glucose being a neutral, can pass through it easily, while ion being a charged have some difficulty. Many substances which are not needed constantly enter the cell by the passive transport. Others are taken up against the concentration gradient. They move from the area of low concentration to area of high concentration, and this uphill movement actually material requires energy and is termed as a active transport. The energy used for this movement is provided by ATP. And in many animal cells, the cell membrane helps to take in material by unfolding in the form of vacuoles. This type of intake is called endocytosis, which can be either a phagocytosis to engulf the solid particle or pinocytosis to take in a liquid. In neurons or nerve cell, the cell membrane transmit nerve impulses from one part of the body to the other part to keep the coordination. So in the next, I will give you the examples, the many substances that are diffused by simple diffusion or facilitated diffusion and active transport. So here I have mentioned the examples and the many substances that diffuse by simple diffusion. Actually, simple diffusion means they can pass through, they may be lipid soluble, and they pass through the simple liquid, simple phospholipid substances that are the lipid soluble substances, and different oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen gases, and alcohol. These move by simple diffusion. These are very important MCQs. Facilitated diffusion, glucose, some amino acids, and water, these move by the channels or carrier proteins that are present in the cell membrane. Actually, this is called the facilitated diffusion. Active transport, ions being a charged substances, these are the active transport. Actually, osmosis is the movement of water through a semi-permeable membrane, but facilitated diffusion is a process by which it moves. Or we can say the process by which it moves is called the facilitated diffusion, and the movement is called osmosis. Exo and endocytosis is a bulk movement outside or inside the cell respectively. So this was all about the plasma membrane, and in our next lecture we will discuss about the cell wall and the cytoplasm and endoplasmic reticulum. Thank you very much. Take care of yourself and your studies. Thank you.